Hello, hi, welcome once again to M5's English language learning program, Let's Speak English. I'm Gav Duncan, and I'm here on your TV screen to help you learn English. Now, are you sitting comfortably? Yes? Good. And are you ready for today's lesson? Yes? Good. Okay, well let's learn English together. And we're back. Yes, you probably noticed, didn't you? Yes, you're a pretty sharp-eyed bunch. You noticed that we're here. Good. And what else is good is the fact that it's Thursday. Yes, we're getting closer and closer to Friday, people. Friday is coming. It's going to arrive tonight, in fact, at midnight. And then it's going to sit and wait and gather its strength so that by tomorrow evening, when we're all ready to head out, to leave our flats and houses and venture out into town, looking for fun and games, then, by that point, Friday will have reached full strength. Great! Of course, that's tomorrow, and today is still today. But never mind, we're moving past Colossus, inch by inch, minute by minute. And that's positive, because it means that by the time Friday reaches full power, we too should be reaching the heights of our powers too. So, good timing, people, that's what it's all about. Okay. Enough about Friday. Let's get stuck into Thursday. Roll the tape, people. Press the button marked play. And hello again, people, and welcome to another lesson. And yes, we're thinking about grammar again today. And just as you all remember, before we get stuck into the new grammar, we have to run through some of the grammar that we've already seen. So, yesterday, as I'm sure you all remember, we started looking at how we make sentences using verbs in the present simple. Now, we all know that our basic sentence structure for a positive sentence is subject plus verb plus object, if there is an object, obviously. And we also know that we have to be a little bit careful when we're making sentences which are about someone in the third person singular. When we're making sentences where the subject is he, she, or it. Now, when we're making sentences using he, she, or it in the present simple, in English, we know, or we remember, that we have to be careful with the spelling of the verb. Most verbs in the present simple add an S to the end of the infinitive, but if the verb ends in S, or SS, or SH, or CH, or O, then we know that we have to add not S, but ES. I read, but he reads. You smile, but she smiles. They fish, but he fishes. We kiss, but she kisses. I punch Mike Tyson, he punches me. I go home on a tram, but she goes home on a bus. Okay, that's all fine and groovy, but we also remember that some verbs like the verb to be and the verb to have, are irregular. With irregular verbs, we have to learn the correct form. But that's not too difficult for us, is it? No, of course not. I am, you are, he is, she is, it is. We are, you are, they are. I have, you have, he has, she has, it has. We have, you have, they have. All right, so that's simple enough, isn't it? We all remember how we make positive sentences using a verb in the present simple tense. We take a subject, follow it with a verb, and then add an object, if we need one. Okay, but what happens when we want to make a negative sentence? Well, in that case, we need to add another word, don't we? And before you say anything, that word is not, I repeat, not chimpanzee. No. A chimpanzee is a primate and has got nothing to do with English grammar. No, the word we need when we want to make a negative sentence in English is the word not. So, do we just throw in the word not somewhere into the sentence and is that it? No, of course not. If we want to make a negative sentence in English, and also if we want to ask a question using the present simple tense, then we also need a verb to help us. Questions and negatives in the present simple are made with an auxiliary verb. We use the verb to do to help us make negative statements and questions. Okay, so how do we do that? I'm sure you all remember. Okay, let's start with the idea of a negative sentence in the present simple. We need either do plus not or does plus not, depending on the subject we're using. Think about how we conjugate the verb to do. I do, you do, he, she, it does. We do, you do, they do. All right. So we can see that we use different forms of the verb depending on the subject we're using. If we're talking about I, you, we, you, or they, then we use do plus not, or the short, abbreviated version, don't, to make a negative sentence in the present simple. As usual, we start with the subject. I, you, we, you, or they. And now, instead of following with the main verb, we follow the subject with our auxiliary verb and not. In the case of all these subjects, do not or don't. Okay, and what now? Well, now it's very easy. All we have to do is follow don't with the main verb and the rest of the sentence. I like pizza. I don't like pizza. You play tennis very well. You don't play tennis very well. They enjoy opera. They don't enjoy opera. Okay, so that's what happens when the subject we're using is not the third person singular. But what about the situation where the subject is the third person singular? Well, in that case, all we have to do is to make sure that the auxiliary verb is correctly conjugated. Instead of using do plus not for the third person singular, we have to use does plus not. Or the short, abbreviated version doesn't. Apart from that, nothing changes. We still start the sentence with a subject, and now that we're talking about the third person singular, that means the subject is either going to be he, she, or it. Simple. Okay, what comes next? Yes, that's right. When we're making a positive statement in the present simple, we follow the subject with the verb. But when we're making a negative statement, then we follow the subject with the auxiliary verb plus not. So, in this case, it's he, she, or it does plus not he doesn't, she doesn't, and it doesn't. He likes football, he doesn't like football. She works in a bank, she doesn't work in a bank. It looks like a nice place, it doesn't look like a nice place. Now, looking at all of those sentences, all of those negative sentences, is there anything that you notice? Yes, that's right. When we make negative sentences in the present simple, we conjugate the auxiliary verb, not the main verb. So, in the negative sentences we just made about the third person singular, the third person singular change came in the auxiliary verb, when do changed to does. That means that when we follow doesn't with the main verb stays in the infinitive. We don't need to conjugate the main verb in negative sentences. We've already conjugated the auxiliary verb, and that's enough. So the main verb stays in the infinitive. Okay, all right, and well, what now? Well, let's think about questions. When we want to make a question in the present simple, we also need the auxiliary verb to do too. But with questions in English, we change the structure of the sentence, don't we? Yes, when we ask a question in English, we don't start with the subject, but with the auxiliary verb. So that means that depending on who the subject is, we're going to start with either do or does. If we're asking a question about the first person singular, I, or the second person singular, you, or any of the plural subject forms, we, you, or they, then this means that we're going to start the question with do. Okay, and then what? Well, when we're asking questions in the present simple in English, we start with the auxiliary verb correctly conjugated, so either do or does, and then follow the auxiliary verb with the subject. Do I? Do you? Do we? Do you? Do they? All right. And what comes after the subject? Well, we follow the subject with the main verb and then add the rest of the sentence. And we have to remember to put a question mark at the end. just to make sure that everyone knows that we're asking a question. Okay, so that's the deal with most of the subjects, but what about if we want to ask a question about he, she, or it? What if the subject is the third person singular? Well, in that case, all we have to do is to make sure that we use the correctly conjugated form of the auxiliary verb to do. So, if we're asking a question about the third person singular, we don't start with do, but does. After that, it's plain sailing. Does, followed by the third person singular, followed by the main verb and the rest of the sentence, with a question mark at the end. Simple. And what similarity can we see between making negative sentences and asking questions in the present simple? Yes, that's right. We conjugate the auxiliary verb, not the main verb. So when we're asking a question about the third person singular, the main verb stays in the infinitive. We don't have to conjugate it. We've already conjugated the auxiliary verb. We started with does, which means that we've already conjugated the auxiliary verb. So the main verb remains in the infinitive. Do I like pizza? Do you play tennis? Does he like football? Does she study hard at school? Does it bite? Do we agree that this is the best show ever? Do you think you can help me? Do they know the way to San Jose? All right, okay, now we're really cooking with gas. All right, so we've had a quick run through the present simple, but that's not the only tense we know, is it? No, well, which other tenses do we know? Well, for a start, we all remember the present continuous, don't we? Yes, that favourite son of ours, the present continuous tense. So, when do we use the present continuous? Well, we use the present continuous to talk about something which is happening now or around now, things which are perhaps temporary. So we can say, it's raining, and people will understand that the rain is falling from the clouds now when I'm talking. We can say that someone is living in Miskolc, and people will understand that normally this person lives in Madrid, but for some reason they're living in Miskolc now. All right, and how do we form the present continuous tense? Well, we use the verb to be, correctly conjugated, and follow with the ing form of a verb. Now, this causes a few problems, but not many. All we have to do is remember how to conjugate the verb to be correctly. But that's easy, isn't it? I am, you are, he is, she is, it is, we are, you are, they are. Simple, no? Yes. Okay, but there's another area where we also have to be a little bit careful, isn't there? Yes. When we add ing to the infinitive to make the ing form of a verb, sometimes we have to keep an eye out for spelling changes. If the infinitive of the verb ends in e, then when we add the ing ending, we have to remove the e first. This means that make becomes making, write becomes writing, and dance becomes dancing. Write plus ing, writing. Come plus ing, coming. Dance plus ing, dancing. All right, but what if the verb ends in ie? Well, for verbs which end in ie, verbs like the verb to lie or the verb to die, we change the ie to y and then add the ing ending. So lie becomes lying and die becomes dying. And that's all the time we've got for today. Yes, it's true. Would I lie to you? No, of course not. I take my moral guidance from Dave Squid, and he doesn't lie. I suspect that Robin Whiffle also doesn't lie. You can't be Dave Squid's partner and lie. That's just not on. Okay, people, I'm off home, and you lot have got chores to do. So, feed the cat, walk the dog, and speak to the parrot. I'll see you all tomorrow. See you later. Bye!